So I'm Scarlet Ibis James, and I would say that I'm a joy-filled storyteller. Or maybe I want to be a joy-filled storyteller with the soul of a modern-day griot. I carry on the mission of my ancestors to share stories that connect us all. I wish in my writing that we see a little bit of ourselves in many different facets. And so while I write with passion and curiosity about love and longing and desire, I also hold a very pragmatic view of the world, maybe touched by my ADHD as well, understanding that the human experience itself is beautiful and complex. I was born in Trinidad and Tobago, on the island of Trinidad. I've lived for my first 21 years in Sao, Trinidad. My roots actually infuse my work, I think, with cultural richness. My goal is really to help my readers see people, see persons, see humans, not see as other. That in my storytelling, in my portrayal of people, readers will see a bit of themselves and recognize the God in the others. Through storytelling, I hope to remind readers that experiences, love, and desire connect us all. We are one body throughout the world, shaped by our emotions and connections. This debut collection, Scarlet Yearnings, is a unique blend of joy and realism, reflecting my mission to connect us all through shared emotions. I hope that you will receive this offering of mine with open hearts and minds. Hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome. Whether you're seeing this live or after, I am so happy that you're tuning in to this book talk related to my collection of short stories, Scarlet Yearnings, Stories of Love and Desire. This has been a long time in the making. I actually released the book on October 14th, 2024. And I did a launch party that evening. And in it, I invited several folks who were able to read chapters of the book beforehand to really ask me anything about the chapters that they wrote. And what I found out of that is that many of them had other questions, wanted to know more, wanted to have a book talk. And I promised that evening that I would have a book talk once some time had passed and gave more people a chance to really experience my writing. And so that's what we have today. And I was chatting with a fellow creative a couple of weeks ago, back, I think, in maybe early December or late November, and she agreed to host this Q&A book talk with me this evening. And so I wanted to bring to the stage Medusa Peacock. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how this came to be?
Thank you, Scarlett. It's wonderful to be here. And I'm Medusa Peacock. I'm a first time writer. My novel is upcoming to be released in fall of this year. And this came to be because we found that we were really like minded. We both shared this creative need for expression, and we both had common ground with the topics that we're trying to portray and the message that we're trying to share with the world. It also helps that I've got experience in doing video podcasts. And so I think it was the universe that brought us together. And I'm so happy to be here.
happy that you are here. And so I'll let you take over at this point. I think that the first segment of our program is going to be about the stories. The second half of our production is going to be about the writing process. So take it away. Ask me anything.
Sure. And before I ask you anything, I want to just say that as a reader, these stories were so relatable on so many levels. And I think that they would appeal to anyone. Some of us were looking for love, some of us celebrate the love we have, some of us are still hoping to even experience something close to love. And your stories just cover every aspect. And before I launch into the questions, I wanted to share that with the audience because when you described this book to me and you said it was about love, I thought, ooh, that's a very big, powerful topic. How is she going to make that last? And I have to say, reading all these different stories, so human, but at the center, so much about love. You did it. And I wanted to make sure that our audience heard that from these lips before we got into the question. So I hope I didn't put you on the spot with that. I know that was a little bit of improv, but it's just the
Those
way
make the best, right?
it's just the way us creatives roll, right?
Love
So
it.
let's delve into these beautiful stories, as I said, and let's start with a quote from the book. It says, "These stories, they are pieces of my soul, fragments of my deepest desire." Which story do you think best represents your deepest desire and why?
Oh, what an amazing question to start off. So I have my proof copy. This is still my favorite copy, the proof copy of my book. Um, Looking at the table of contents, I think the first time she met her father. No, no, no. Love Me Daddy. Yeah. Love is Forgiveness and Self-Acceptance. Um, hmm, Wait. Hot Subway Love. Okay, okay. So I think to answer your question, each one of these stories has a fragment of my desire. They may have pieces that I build a story around in some cases, or even as I'm crafting a story, perhaps in response to a prompt, my desire creeps in. I think that together they represent a big portion of my desire.
So, what I'm hearing is that if we had to capture the resonance to you in one word,
Mm.
it would be desire. Desire in every form, sounds
Indeed.
like.
From the little girl, the woman who's lost a loved one, um, the woman who is in a marriage that she may want more of from, um, and even for that impromptu, just met moment of spark. Yeah.
Well, let's move on to the second question. Trisha learned to smile even as her heart broke. Some of you may have just seen that on the screen. Too many women and girls around the world relate to this. Too many of us are taught to put ourselves last. What do you have to say to all the broken-hearted smilers out there?
Um, that it's okay that you, number one, are not alone. Um, Number two, you have to move through it. Um, it's a part of who you are. Uh, and you also will learn to recognize it in other people and give them grace. But give yourself grace even as you are moving through those hard, tough experiences. And look, this could happen. This, as I described, was with a little girl and her parent. It can also happen in a work situation where something is happening and you are not, and you know this is unfair, you know this is not right, but you smile. What was actually in my head is when I was younger, my aunt used to say that I would just smile like through everything. And I remember that her comment about that. And it used to irritate her because she knew that I wasn't happy in certain moments, but I would still continue to smile, hoping for things to smooth over and go away. But I think recognizing it and addressing it is important, but knowing that it's a completely human reaction. When you think of fight, or, there's also freeze. You could freeze into smiling. I think that that's where it comes from. Yeah. My advice, be human about it and recognize.
What a great answer. I think in the message that you just said, one of the most profound things that leapt out was when you talked about this can happen to you so that you can recognize it in someone else and give them grace. And so many times we forget that life is happening for us, not to us, right? It's things are working out for us even when they don't feel like they're working out for us. And I think your message just now just conveyed that to the highest level. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course, of course.
So
And
let's
thank
go.
you for sharing that response. That is so true. Yeah.
Well, let's go to more exploration of these wonderful stories that you've put together. There's one called Love in Cosmic Times. Now, this story, it really captured my imagination because I really appreciated how you tackled so many topics, from online dating, fishing, ghosting, and everything in between. It was almost like anything that could happen because of being online and not being in direct contact happened in this story. What I did like is that in the end, the female lead made a very empowered decision. What is your message to the world here?
Oh, see who you're talking to as quickly as possible. Even if it's years and years into the future where this is primarily placed, I think getting to the real person is important quickly. Also, that, and it's just so interesting you asked this question because today, most of today, I was writing, and I was writing the sequel to this that takes place 10 years later, and or 15 years later, I think. And this whole concept of age was a very big thing in this one. I realized only recently when I did a reading is that I didn't put how old she was. And so I think in writing the first iteration of this, I really wanted the readers to perhaps insert what they thought, and perhaps see themselves in there. Um, but I think my message to the world around dating is that see the person first, but also know that people are ever evolving as well. That they may be surprising, and because he knew her. This is the thing, like, right? And so in that moment, she stepped away. She wanted to do, to own the narrative, realize, okay, this happened, go on. But I had so much fun writing that story. I really did. And at the time that I wrote it, I shared recently that I was looking at a lot of content around how we're interacting with AI these days and how we personify Claude or Chat, how they become real, and this whole concept of what is real, who is real. I just wanted to explore that and have some fun with it. What happened to her was not fun, but but I would say yes. The big message is the person that you're seeing is always who they want you to see at that time. And that's actually whether the case of whether you've seen them, met them, or not, actually. Because sometimes even when you've met them, who they are really becomes evident later. I don't know if that's happened to people, um, but yeah, that was the caveat of my story. That be careful and meet them and pull that out as quickly as possible.
Well, you raise a lot of very important questions about identity with that
Mm.
story and exploring self identity and coming to a conclusion about it. So, very powerful message. So, let's just go into the next one where we talk about love is forgiveness and self acceptance, is the name of that story. But the quote that I pulled from it was, I feel like I'm the trophy in the display case. I want more than just a title. What was your intention behind these words?
Yeah, I think this one is more about sometimes in relationships, it's more about the the fact that you're married, the fact that you're married for a long time becomes the message, um, versus, oh, I think that I saw an interview that Tia, remember Tia and I forgot the other twin's name. Um,
Tia and Tamara? The
yes, Tia and Tamara. I don't remember who was speaking, but she was talking, the one who's still married, let's put it that way. And she was
Mhm.
speaking about the relationship with her and her husband. And she was saying that so many times she goes to when before she got married, when she would go to restaurants, that she would see two people and they would be clearly married, but they don't say anything to each other, right? They're just there. And she was putting that in contrast to her marriage, where when they go out together, they're having fun, they're laughing, they are their best friends, like it was just such a different um, dynamic. And that's what she wanted out of marriage. I think that what I was trying to illustrate is there are some relationships where the fact that you're together is the thing versus really loving and having fun with and interacting with the person that you're with, hubby and I went out last night. We were having a great time in the space, the music. I drank way too fast, like really having fun. That dynamic of relationship is so important versus just being in a relationship to be in a relationship, to say, check, I'm married, you know?
Well, I think unfortunately, a lot of women in marriages would relate to everything you just said. So maybe it comes down to the reasons that people get married. Because
Mm.
far too many times we do see men wanting wives to be a trophy. There is a term called trophy wife, or they call it arm candy. Sometimes a marriage is a business contract, and sometimes it is something that two families really want, instead of the two people that are involved. So there's so many different uh, reasons to get married, and I think your message here is not so much about being married, but having that partnership and celebrating that relationship with the other person. That's what I heard when you answered the question. So I
I
really hope
love
that
your
that falls in line.
Yep, I love that. I think that that's absolutely right. I think that what we want is partnership um, and really to have somebody by ourselves that we enjoy, right? Which is lovely.
That's a great way to cap it out there. Let's move on to the next question. This is this story. I know you said you had a lot of fun writing Love in Cosmic Times, and it was so creative. But this story, the one about love, mystical, and destined, this one blew my mind. I thought, wow, this is such a creative story, but also so deep and meaningful in terms of spirituality. It's a very, very different story. And to me, it came across as you weren't just writing about soulmates, but actually spiritually connected mates. And not only are they spiritually connected, but they defy space and time.
Yeah.
What was your inspiration for this? Why Brazil and India? Why Yoruba?
Okay, so this was a story that was months in the making to develop. It started, many of my stories I've explained in the past began on medium.com in response to a prompt of some kind. I don't even remember what the original prompt was for this, but it started with, but I knew what I was reading at the time. I think it might not be, it might be good on paper. I think I'll have to look back at the name of the book, but it was so good. And it was about a pen pal relationship. And I just loved that idea. And the thing about it is that I believed that I know that I had a pen pal when I was younger. And I know that, and I remembered it when I read the book, because I hadn't, these thoughts go away so often, but, and I suspect that my grandmother stopped the relationship. So in other words, I do believe that, and it was different. My pen pal was from Poland. It was very, very different, but I remember being aware that I was, approaching teenhood, and my grandmother had her way, of stopping things. Um, so it was born out of reading this book. Had this memory. The second thing is one of my favorite musicians is David Rudder. And when around the time that I would have left Trinidad, he had an album where he featured a song called Bahia Girl, Bahia Woman. And it was only then, it was through him. So I'm so thankful for him as a teacher, right? That I became aware of the Bahia culture and that it was so connected to, the Yoruba religion. Um, and I just became enamored with it. It was such a connection. And in my own life, in my own experience, um, there were members of my family who, in fact, every other member of my grandmother's family besides her was part of what in Trinidad is called the Spiritual Baptists. It is another new name for it. I can't recall right now, um, but it's very much linked to the Yoruba faith and traditions and experiences. My grandmother became Catholic because of her upbringing, but everyone else on her side of the family was a part of that very connected to Africa religion. Last thing, it's complex, it's complicated, but the last thing, both you and I, Medusa, are from Trinidad originally, Trinidad and Tobago, and the culture of Trinidad is Indian and African. Most of the people from Trinidad are find their lineage back to those two continents, those two areas of the world. And so, but there's always growing up, I always knew there was this division, at least when I was growing up, between sort of that intermingling. So I wanted to address almost all of those things, a memory of a pen pal, an idea that I am connected to the Yoruba religion. And then there's this whole thing of love that gets divided because these two humans from from different cultures must not integrate. And I wanted to address all those things in it, and also bring up that we are all, at the base, we are all so, we are all, I put it in the intro, we're all part of one spiritual body. And even when it's on two different sides. So in India, there's a group of people, of very dark-skinned Indian people, um, that practice in a different way as well. And but we don't really explore that a whole lot, and I wanted to explore it with this one. It does also, I think the challenge might have been to do the magical realism or fantasy, and I was trying my hand at that. It's not typically what I do, but the interesting thing is, Medusa, that story seems to resonate with so many people. Like, a lot of the reviews that I've gotten back have mentioned that story as being their favorite, which surprised me. I was very nervous about it being the last story in the book, because that's what you remember. But I'm happy that I did. I was led to do it. And so I'm happy that I hope that answers your questions. I'm not even sure, but that's how it
Oh,
came together.
of course it does. The idea was to explore this very different story. And what I liked about your answers is that it revealed that there was a lot of you in the story, which every author does. They put a piece of themselves in their work for sure. But you also tackled some very difficult themes. You have the racial differences, the cultural differences. This is also partially a growth story, so it's everything you could conceivably dream of. And if I were to go to a writing class and I were to say, put all these themes together and create a story, most people might just drop their pens and walk out of the class, right? Because conceptually, to to create a story that talks about racial tensions and cultural tensions, to talk about to work into a story that also addresses mysticism and
Mhm.
spirituality, and then throw in Brazil, India, and Yoruba. It's like, how does a person create this? So the creativity behind it is so monumental, which is why I'm very happy that you put it as the last story in your book, because like you said, it's the one that people remember. And
Mhm.
this actually happened to be my favorite story out of all the ones in the
Oh.
book. So I'm so glad that you were able to talk about the inspiration, and we were able to sort of like break that out, because as a writer, I feel that you have done the impossible with this, and I wanted to celebrate that. Being a fellow creative, I wanted to celebrate the absolute creativity involved in putting all those themes together, and not just putting them together, but in a way that would touch people's hearts.
I
I mean,
love
and
that.
you took
Say that.
something like pen pals, right? How many people today who are under the age of 30 would
Mm,
know what a pen pal is, right?
mhm.
But the story is so involved in so many different other themes that even if someone never had a pen pal in their life, they could still read this story and walk away totally amazed by it. And I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge and celebrate that with you, Scarlett, because I don't think you do it by yourself. So, and you know, you even work in your Trinidadian roots into your stories, into many of them. And that's not just putting yourself in your stories, but it's a way of honoring your heritage and your culture. And I think that that's very important for any writer. But the fact that you've done it and you make it so entwined in the story is amazing. And that's something that I hope to see in future work from you. I heard something about a sequel to one of the stories that we discussed. I think it was the one in Love in Cosmic Times. There's a sequel. But let's pause for a minute and talk about that, right? Because you wrote a story about online, well, in this case, online dating. And we talked about how people could be false and different things. But at the end of the story, and I think this is something that I really would love our audience to be aware of, is at the end of the story, the protagonist, she didn't just say, "Oh, woe is me. Oh, how could I just fall for all this deception?" Or, how could I have not known any better? Instead, she followed it through in terms of determining who was behind the texts and how they or the messages and how they were coming about. And then when she discovered who it was, she didn't beat herself up. She just kind of said, "Oh, okay, this is like a learning curve for me. I'm not going to be a victim here. I'm going to take this and go after it from a place of strength." And I think that's the message for anyone out there who's ever succumbed to any kind of dishonesty, whether it is via online dating or phishing or all these different avenues that we have today where people can try to deliberately manipulate your intentions and your state of being and try to get something from you that's not real. So, I just didn't want that to be lost on our audience because it's such a powerful, structured thing. And I think that is also an underrunning theme in your stories, whether it is someone who is looking for daddy, who never had that father to grow up with and protect them, or if it's just a woman who is caught in a marriage that she somehow suddenly realizes she doesn't want. It really doesn't matter because the underlying theme is that your female characters always come from a place of strength. They're always trying to change their stars. They're always trying to move forward. And I kind of wanted us to just talk about that just a little bit before we moved on to the next segment, if that's okay with you.
Of course. Well, I love what you've seen. I love, and you're absolutely right. Many of my characters are alpha. I think I am very alpha as well. The interesting thing is, one of my early readers for the book pointed out to me that the story that she read was all about choice. And as I looked back and listened to the audio version of the book, I realized that that was a theme through all the stories. The protagonist, the main character, always was the choice, always made the choice. And whether that is to walk away or stay or do something different, they always had a choice. And I think, Medusa, I want folks to understand that you own your story. You are the main character. And when things occur in your life, in your relationships, that your reaction is your power, and you should exercise that power by choosing what is the best next thing, period.
Well, I think if I had to say there was a common theme for all your female protagonists, is that they do have that choice. And the underlying theme throughout all the stories was choose you. Choose
Yes.
you.
Yes. I think that's a perfect way to end our first segment. I love this conversation so far about the stories. I hope that many of the questions that people had about the stories were answered. If they were not answered, we're going to give a 1-minute break I see our director motioning to me. We're going to take a 1 minute break where I hope that you put into the chat. We have a very intimate group today, so put into the chat any and every question you may have. And we'll pause for now, take a 1 minute break, and we'll be right back. All right, we are back. So, the first part of our segment today was all about the stories. So, Medusa, you wanted to look at a different side to the next for the remainder of the session. What are you thinking there?
Well, I thought that it would be a great benefit to our audience if we focused on the writing part of the stories, on you as an author, draw on your inspirations, maybe your advice to people out there, different things like that. Because, as I mentioned, some of these stories were so creative. I think they deserve some kind of, let's talk about the magic behind them approach. And that's what I was thinking this segment could be.
All right, let's do it. I'm ready.
You're ready? All right, here we go. So, first question. In this book, you describe quite a number of hunky, gorgeous men in all shapes and sizes, may I add. Some with blue eyes, some with brown eyes, some with physiques that make us, turn our heads and maybe pause for a second. And all these gorgeous men that you're describing, are any of them represented in terms of your past relationships?
Oh my gosh. This is being recorded, isn't it?
Yes,
No,
it is.
no. In truth, I think that, I told my husband this. I said, I was deliberate in many of my stories in putting characters who, number one, do not look like my husband necessarily. Um, I because he knows that that's what I like. He is what I like. And so I didn't want to create characters that might cause him to think, what are you trying to say to me? Like, what's happening? I wanted to put people who were very different. In fact, um, I would say all my characters, the male characters, are all made up of perhaps my book bay guys, who was my book boyfriend for a long time, or I love the writings of Talia Hibbert and Theodora Taylor. I love the diversity that they put into their characters, including Kilby Glades as well. Um, so I imagine perhaps any man. The other thing you must know, Medusa, is I try to, um, as much as possible, show different types of people in loving relationships. Where now most of the women in my characters are Black, but where the women are respected and admired and revered, and just that these are positive relationships that people can have, right? But no, they're all made up. No exes in there.
Well, there's so much of you in these stories. After reading them, a person will just want to ask, because the descriptions
Totally.
of these guys, are really very thorough, I might add. Um, and as
That's
you
women
mentioned,
of an
some of them,
overactive imagination.
well, I don't know. You mentioned book crushes. I think some of these gorgeous men might give some people book crushes as well. So let's pause on that. But also, I would be remiss if I didn't explore this topic a little further and talk about one of your stories where there is an elevator interaction, a very hot, steamy elevator interaction. And I know this is impromptu of me, but that's just how I roll, Scarlett. And this was meant to turn you scarlet, and I think it's working. So um, let's talk about that elevator scene a little bit. Life
Love lift me up.
writer, how does one, create and pull in that level of intense sexuality and attraction? I
How
mean,
do you do it?
it's very short of book porn. So let's be honest here. Let's just go for it, because there might be people looking at this that didn't read the book yet. So let's just
Yes.
entice further and talk about it's one level shy of book porn. So why don't you tell us about this and how you were able to create something like that?
I know. One person who read it said to me, which building is that in? I need to get to that building and get in that elevator. So Love Lift Me Up. This was a fun piece. So since moving to New York 2 years ago, um, I love the idea of elevators and buildings where there are many souls inside. And um, this one was totally just made up. And what I did is, oh, the other thing about my stories is that you may notice that many of them have revealed their inner thoughts. So for me, at least, so much of my existence happens inside my head. There are things that I say out loud, but so much of the internal dialogue that takes place um, is a ever present experience of my life, right? Also, being in New York, I'm an observer of people, right? And so I just had the idea that okay, you're in an elevator, you see someone. How many times we're in an elevator, we see someone and we make up a story about the people that we see. And that's what this is. It's you come in, you see them, and you're like, oh my God, like, who is that? Um, and this particular woman, Marcia, because she's Trinity, right? Marcia, she has just a daydream in the middle of an elevator going up, and sometimes they're long rides. So girl, I don't know. What I would say is I feel as though sometimes I'm a channel of sorts for people, and a channel for the stories, and they come, and I don't know where they come from, but they just flow. And that one flowed exactly as I wrote it initially, is exactly how it is in the book. I wish I could say it was just me, but it's just the way it came to me. The spirits delivered that story to me, and clearly it resonated.
Well, an elevator, whether it's a short ride in an elevator or a long one, an elevator is an intimate space. And you took this very human component of being in a very intimate space with different people and sort of translated to possibilities for that
Yeah.
human connection. A little spicy possibility, but again, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for making it very clear to the audience that that was not based on an elevator experience that you had. So
No.
I think that that was very clear. And so in that, we're going to segue into the next question, which is really about your spousal involvement, because you thanked your husband for his support. And for all the aspiring writers out there, especially the ones who are moms with children and husbands, tell us what that support from your husband looked like. What sacrifices did he make to make this possible for you?
Sure. Oh, he's a saint. So I would say number one, he kept asking me, "Did you write today? How's it coming along? What's happening?" I think that he's done it. He did it with the book, but he's done it before when I was going through school, getting my master's, checking in on me, making sure that he was clearly, even recently, he was like, "How's that book? Are you finished with that book? You need to get it done right now," like, etc. So he's always cognizant of that. I would say too, he is um, he's understanding when he realizes that I'm on a roll. So what that means is there may be a Saturday that I write all day, and he may come in and he just observes, he reads the room, and then he makes dinner because he knows that that would not be me tonight. And so he does it that way as well. As well too, we do have an LLC together. So we publish under the LLC, which is DKJ Enterprises. And he's part of that. And so financially as well, he contributes to making sure that this happens. And so I would say that, and he comes to all my events. I think he just dropped off though, but I think he comes to all my events, period. He's always there, and supportive, whatever I need. But he also helps push me along, because sometimes I do need that, because I may not keep going if I did not have that sort of prompt. So that's what I would say that his support looks like.
Well, thank you for that very honest answer. And I'm sure anyone listening or watching can appreciate that. I think what I heard from your response was that he creates space in your life for your writing. He doesn't just expect you to do that. He does it himself, because you said, like you said, the Saturday that you would be writing all day, he wouldn't expect you to to stop and make dinner, he would just, okay, yep, it's my turn to cook. I'll let her do her thing. You said he also encourages you in terms of, reminds you of your deadlines and ask you, how's it coming along and things like that. Um, and we all know that you also profoundly stated that none of the gorgeous men in the book were your exes. You actually acknowledged to everyone tuning in that your husband is your type. He is the man. And I think we're beginning to see why, right? So I think maybe when we're done here, one of the questions in the chat might be, does he have a brother who is single? Uh, but, you might want to answer that right now if you wanted to. He has two brothers who are single. Okay, so for
One is
everyone,
single. One is single.
okay, well,
One is single.
if we were to read some of your stories, we could sort of say that that's not a barrier. That's not the barrier that you'd like it to be. But I won't go there. I just want to make this as enticing as it should be for people who haven't read these stories yet. So this is my way of doing that.
By the
You might
way,
never ask me to
Medusa,
host again. So,
Medusa, he has confirmed that he is still on the call.
oh, well, good thing you just kept those answers honest then, huh?
Indeed.
Well, good. So he's on the call to hear us endorse that he is the man, that by the end of this segment, people are going to want to know if he has any brothers because they're going to want someone to be as supportive as he has.
Indeed. Indeed.
You've been very genuine about that. So that's good. I'm glad that he got to hear you say those things. So let's go to the next question. And this is, what made you decide to pursue writing?
This one, I was led there by the one who just twist, like the straw that broke the camel's back is so violent. But the thing that happened that facilitated me actually starting was I had a member of my team, Helen. She's actually from China, and she really encouraged me when I was in between jobs to write, because she felt as though so many of the communications that I did at work were so creative, and she loved reading my notes and to the team, etc. And but hers came at the end of perhaps a parade of people who have encouraged me to do so in the past. My sister Paula has, said it to me. My stepmom has said it to me. I remember doing an announcement for my youngest son, and my stepmom saying, "You should be a writer." There were just all these different things. And I started writing creative nonfiction to begin with. But within the Medium platform, they have so many prompts around creative and fiction writing that I started trying my hand on those stories and found that I love them. I love creating stories. And then I, split the work that I was doing so that fiction would be under my alter ego, Scarlet Ibis James. And it just took off. It's actually the more popular articles of my two personas on Medium. Scarlet is more popular. But I felt like I couldn't stop. I think that once you begin that creative endeavor, Medusa, I think it's, at least for me, it has been very hard to turn it off. It's where I find my joy. And I love the creative process. So yes, someone who I consider a friend now did suggest to me. I started, and I think why I continue is because it brings me great joy, and actually seeing people's responses to my writing is very. I just love that. I think Medusa might be stuck. What do you think, Damar? I think, let's see. Oh, no. I hope she comes back on soon. Let's see. Okay, so let's carry on. So, one of the things that I know she was going to ask is about love, right? Um, why love? Why now? Um, the stories just came up because oh, am I frozen now? I think I might be frozen tomorrow. I think I might be frozen. Yes, okay. So why love? It's what comes up most often for me. Love comes up most often. And I I feel led to write stories about those. Um, let's see. Okay, so let's go to the questions in the chat. Why don't we until Medusa comes back? There was one from Valerie. Thank you, Valerie. Um, I don't know why you said no. I can't remember what I was saying when you said no, but your question was, can you break down the hot subway love story? Yeah, so this one was really out of my experience of being in New York subways. You know, I take it several times a day, um, and um, I observe people and I observe stories that I see and I imagine the stories that I see. And this one came out of that. I love the concept of you're on one side of the platform and then you look over and there's another person on the platform that you knew. Um, and I created this story out of the ether. I think that Damon, I think is his name. He just spoke to me, and his story came through. I think that the whole idea of unrequited love is very attractive to me as well. And the best love stories are the love stories that I adore, like the stories by Wong Kar-wai, or he's my favorite movie producer and writer. I love that concept of love that does not get fulfilled, and the heartache associated with that. I think so many people experience that. I also delved into the idea that there's always a voice in your head. And for him, it was his brother. And um, I love the concept that those who have gone on to a different realm might actually still be supporting you, um, pushing you through experiences, interacting and interceding in um, their life with you, in your life, right? And this one was definitely there where, um, he's going through this, he's having an episode, and his brother decides, and he hears his brother speaking to him and pushing him to a different place. I think there's just a comfort in that. So I wanted to, even though the love of his life didn't materialize, I wanted to give him comfort and a way forward, where he clearly needed it, to be. I hope that answers your question, Valerie. Okay. Oh my gosh, I have to check in. Can we go to a musical interlude? Let's see. Yes, she did text me. We're waiting for you to come back. Yes, she said she was frozen. Okay. Last question from her, and then if you have questions in the audience about any of the stories, let me know. I know that one of the questions that she wanted to ask me was around, if you had a chance to do it all again, what would you do differently? About writing, I would say that um, I took this endeavor of publishing this book as a experiment in how to. Um, and I really took it as a learning experience. And because of that, there are a number of things I would do differently. Number one, I would cultivate an audience well ahead of publication. I would get more advanced readers to look at my book and ask questions. I would do even giveaways ahead of time, which is something that I intend to do when I publish the next book. I would, I think that's the major thing, is getting more readers who are interested in the type of fiction that I write. So um, I think that Medusa earlier on talked about the fact that one of my stories approaches um, fiction porn, but it doesn't get there. I don't write smut, and at this time, although I enjoy it, I listen and I don't judge, right? um, and I would definitely look for more people that enjoy literary fiction, contemporary fiction, and have them read my book, review my book ahead of time. That's one thing that I intend to do differently. And I'm writing the second one now. If anyone would like to read some of the stories ahead of time, send me a note on scarletibis.com, so scarletibisjames.com, and I'll be happy to add you to the list of people who are reviewing. I'm getting great feedback so far, really good. The interesting thing about the second book is that we are really getting it from the other vantage point, the other side of the story, and it's mostly men. So a lot of the storytelling is from a main protagonist point of view. So we'll see how that goes, if I'm really able to capture the man's viewpoint and allow all the women who read the first book to get an insight into how the men were feeling. All right. Okay, we've got a question from Stephanie Scott. Thank you. Are you going to stick with short stories, or will you branch out to novels? So great question. I started this journey writing a novel. I've spoken about it, that it was challenging. Um, and, but the thing about these stories, Stephanie, is that most people who've read them want to know more. As I have been venturing into the second book, what I'm realizing is that more is coming. And so the second book was going to be, or is currently going to be, a segment, a response to all the pieces from the first book. But the stories are much, much longer. So much so, one particular story is so long. The very first one, right? The answer to the first time she met her father is so long in the second book, because it's from the father's point of view, that I'm actually contemplating it being a standalone. I'm not there yet. I'm not quite there yet. It may be novella linked. So it might be a mini novel, Stephanie, before going on, but it's getting there. It's getting there. And I do want to go back to the original novel that I had intended to write. And that those characters, again, are knocking at my door. Okay, so I think other questions. What other questions do we have? Let's see. Some people sent in questions ahead of time. Let's see. Okay, so one question that came in was Oren, Aisha, Senzada, Cleolin are all such musical names. Where did I get them from? How did I come up with those names? So, Oren, so I wanted a Yoruba name, and this Orin is representative of the sun, the whole idea. And Orin actually is the protagonist in the book that I'm going to write. And so the story Love Interrupted is a segment of her story. And so I wanted the idea of Orin is that she's the sun and she's being orbited by two moons. And that, I can't take credit. I think the spirit just whispered to me that that's who she was. Aisha, Senzata, Cleolin. I aim for names that are different, that are not the norm. Although there's some that are kind of standard, let's say. Is that a right word? But there is a Nancy in there. There are, I think, Damon. So there are some names that are more familiar, is what I would say. But I do try to find names that are related to the culture that I'm expressing. I think Cleolin is more of a Southeast Asian name. Senzata is definitely more on the Brazilian side. Aisha is a familiar name, I think, in African American culture. And so I take it from all over the place. When I was younger, interestingly enough, I remember I would look at videos of movies, and look at the end credits all the time. And I always, would try to remember the names because I thought that would be such a great source for names. But I try to see what the spirit tells me their story wants to be. And so that's where I typically would get the names from. Okay. Any other questions? You had me. It's all any questions. Okay, I'm good. Look, here's the thing. You can always reach out to me. There's always a way for you to contact me. Join the collective on the website. I want to thank Medusa. I know she had trouble with her connection for today. Oh, Stephanie, thank you. Scarlet Ibis James. My name is born out of the national bird of Trinidad and Tobago, which is the Scarlet Ibis. It's something that was part of my whole childhood growing up, something I care very much about. They are brilliantly red. They may be reminiscent of a flamingo, but not. They fly, especially in the evening time as they come back to their nests in the Caroni River. It's a beautiful spectacle of red against the deep green background of the Caroni Swamp. And it's just a very connection. It's my connection to Trinidad. James is actually my maiden name. It's my mother's name. And it's maybe a connection back to who I am from the beginning. And so that's how I came up with my name, Scarlet Ibis James, as I was looking for my alter ego. That's what rose to the occasion. But thank you for that question. Thank you for that question. I want to go ahead and wrap up for today. I want to thank Medusa Peacock. I put her email address, maybe June, we can put her email address back up here. If you want to be a part of her advanced reader, she actually is very close to publishing her novel. If you would love to read some of that, please send her an email. It's yesiammedusa2025@gmail.com. And then I also want to invite you to come to my website and join the collective. In 2025, I'm going to be mainly putting together notes that go out to people who've opted in, because I don't want to bombard people who really don't want the messages are related to it. So keep up there. Definitely follow me on on Amazon as an author, on Goodreads. If you haven't yet, please, please, please leave me a review if you read my book. Thank you. And do leave me a review. Let me know what you thought and lead others to that. And I thank you for being here with me today, for sending your questions in ahead of time. We hope we covered most of those. And I wish you all you need to thrive in 2025. Thank you.
We need to get a little
Wakefield book 2, like I just finished the first draft of their story. And it's still in keeping with the whole K-drama.
Okay.
It's gonna be great. You know what? I get so much joy from writing. I get so much joy from writing. It's just spectacular.